I guess the first like pivotal moment in my life was I wore a bikini for the first time when I was 10 years old, and I came out the changing room. And because I'd had all these surgeries, but then everything else really in my life was normal, apart from the fact that like my friends would know, oh, Michelle disappears every now and then, but that's all they kind of
Mm.
knew. Um, it was when my scars were on show that people reacted to it, and it was these looks of shock and pity and horror, and it was particularly pity that I had an issue with even from like a young child. I was a very proud person, and to a pity always comes with that energy of looking down on someone.
Uh,
And it was kind of that moment that I realized, like, oh, okay, so not only did my surgeries make me different, but my scars make me different.
mm.
Okay, let's never talk about it. Let's never show them, never like discuss them. And it was only really in university that things started changing around that, because even going the year before university, it was the idea of, okay, but if I want to have a relationship, a romantic relationship, I can't hide my scars anymore. Like
Yeah.
everything else, I don't have to wear a bikini, but like if I do want to be intimate with someone, I do have to take my top off. And
Can
so,
Can I just go back for a second? Because like what I see is I did a lot of work with the Children's Hospital Los Angeles here in LA. And one of the things that we did was we raised over $160,000 for the teens room, which was for teens helping teens, because living in and out of hospitals, I don't think enough people recognize how much is taken away from you and your development of going to prom, or doing the little things in which you feel like you're connected to feeling normal again when you do get out of the hospital and before you go back in. And I'd be curious about your experience, and what you would have wanted or needed during that period of time that maybe wasn't available to you in the healthcare system or in the hospitals that you were at.
I think so much has, I'm not old compared to the world. Like I'm 27 years old, but so
No.
much has changed in the
Yeah.
last 20 years alone, and I have seen it. But at the time that I was in hospital, and again, that's like close to 2 decades ago, there was no therapy element, there was no mental
Mm,
health element, there was no, even the physiotherapy side wasn't really there. So everything was so focused on survival, and
yeah.
then you leave hospital and it's done, like you're okay now. But actually, not only mental health wise, but like my recovery, I never really had any support for the physiotherapy side, so it was
Mm,
learning how to walk again by myself. But if I could go back to that time, I think genuinely it would have just been someone telling me, you are allowed to be upset, you're allowed to
right.
be angry. Especially,
Mm.
I don't know whether this is an American thing or an LA thing, but it was like
No, please.
my personal experience was within the hospital was the be positive, you're so lucky to have the best medical care in the world, be grateful for that. And I was like, but
Right.
it was only really once I became an adult that I was like, I was a child who'd had 13 surgeries before the age of 11. I was a child who had a brain tumor in her body for 11 years before anyone discovered it, and through those like 13 surgeries no one found out I had a tumor. If you found out that day, you'd be angry too. But I just remember like I was never allowed to be angry or like sad about it, because I mean, even when I cried, they would be like, don't cry, it's lowering your potassium levels. Like,
Mm,
so 3 months in hospital being bedridden, and those
mm,
potassium levels were what was the focus, as opposed to like just letting me get the emotion out of my body. And if I go even younger than that, so let's say like 7 years old, my biggest memories were missing out on things like I was quite a maths geek, and I had got to the final round of uh, like across the whole of Hong Kong of a maths competition, and
of course you did.
I was the final two schools, and I got ill on that day and I
Mm,
couldn't go, and they won by default. And
yeah.
it was the I'm a very competitive person, and it was the most frustrating thing lying in that bed that day, being like, I have a headache right now. Yes, I am in physical pain, but I'm actually not putting any danger to myself by going. I will still be in pain,
Mm,
whether I'm lying in bed there or actually living my life. So I almost wish I
mm,
had a little bit more control, that I could have chosen what, as long as it wasn't putting my health in danger, it didn't matter whether I was in pain in my mind, because to an extent you get used to physical pain when you're so used to living that way anyway. The part I cared about was missing out on my life.